It feels incredible.
Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live presented by La Pop. That's LAPOP. You can always check them out on Instagram, Twitter, and at their Doral location. Let me introduce everyone we have here tonight for this episode of FOF Live. We have Kevin, Isaac, Noah, and Sky Carp enthusiast, Mr. Eli Sussman. So for this show, let me just go ahead and maybe talk a little bit about the topics we have in hand so the viewers can maybe know where they want to catch in or maybe what really hoping for us to talk about. We're going to talk about Jonathan Davis, option decisions, AFL updates. So, Kevin's going to get ready for that. And we have World Series talk and audience questions. So if you want us to answer any of your questions, put them in the chat and we'll be more than happy to answer them as the stream progresses. But first, let's talk about Jonathan Davis electing free agency, one of our favorite players from the 2023 season. Eli, what did this mean for the Marlins in 24? Losing maybe Jonathan Davis, I know a guy 32 years old coming off an injury, but still it feels like he brought a lot to this team in his limited playing time.
Yes, as you pretty well summed up on our site as part of our season review series, he was even better than advertised when they got him, because he wasn't advertised very highly when they required him from the Tigers, but specifically from the Tigers AAA team. Like, he wasn't even getting a look on their big league team for a non-competitive one early in the year when they made that trade. They caught some people by surprise that they actually sent one of their recent draft picks, high draft pick Brady Allen, the other way to get Davis. And he proved them smart almost immediately. He got off to that really terrific start on that first road trip when he joined. Even when his bat faded, they just had so much success with him in the lineup, and everybody had great things to say about his impact, his intangibles, what he brought in that clubhouse, even though it was only, all said and done, just 34 games as a Marlin in the big leagues. And even though the overall stats aren't that sexy, he did fill in at a pretty crucial time when they just didn't have anywhere else to look at center field. The interesting part is that he just had so much major league experience before this that had gone really badly. He was the quintessential journeyman, and he had failed to hit at like so many of these previous stops. So even though he performs at a way in the small sample that looks like a guy that should stick on your 40-man roster during the offseason, somebody that you'd feel okay with giving a slightly pay raise to next year in his first year of arbitration eligibility, like, this track record was pretty concerning. And this just shows, I think, that the current Marlins front office, interim GM Brian Chadden, and whoever else is making calling the shots right now, they probably felt he was closer to the guy that he was from 2018 to 2022 than he was the guy that we saw in the small sample this year. The timing surprises me a little bit. I thought this decision could have waited a few more weeks until the actual non-tender deadline, but instead they make it pretty clear that they just didn't see him as somebody that should have a guaranteed spot entering next year. So now the question is whether they try to reunite with him on a minor league deal.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to elaborate on with just the intangibles with him is, yeah, he only played in 30-something games, but after his injury, he was around the team every single day. He was in the clubhouse, in the dugout every single day, and he was a spark plug in that clubhouse. And a lot of guys credit him for keeping the vibes up during the rough stretch in July. So it's rough to see a guy like him go, because he's just was one of the nicest human beings, and I'm always big on the nice guys sticking around. But Again, being nice doesn't really help on the field, but it's one of those guys that I would have loved to have seen stick around. Maybe they get him back in free agency, maybe not. I don't know, but it's sad to see him go.
It's also worth noting kind of how perfect his acquisition kind of came in right when Jazz went on the IL. He played pretty well. The defensive metrics won't show it, but he was pretty good, I guess you could say, from the eye test in center field. Obviously, he goes down with his injury trying to make a big play, and fortunately, just blew out his knee, I guess, best way to say it. But, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't return. He's going to get some interest from other teams. He's a really quick guy, nice defensive versatility. Put him in the late in the game if you need him to pinch run. And honestly, Miami kind of has similar guys in the system, in the minor league system. We'll talk about those later, but Garrett Hampson likely, I would like to see him come back if John Birdie's still on the roster. Xavier Edwards, who was pretty good for Miami. Just looking down the roster in the minor leagues, Jake Mangum, who center fielder, hits 300, slap hitter, really quick, makes a lot of sense to bring on. So
yeah,
if a similar guy, a lot younger than Davis. Davis was already 31, so doesn't hurt to bring someone like Mangum out there. Yeah,
one of the more underrated moves of Kim Ng's tenure for sure.
Yeah, and you also see how much Skip entrusted him. He only played 34 games, but this was a career high in at bats and plate appearances. I believe he had 104 at bats, around 90 something plate appearances, or the other way around.
Yeah, we still got you. This is a video of him.
Okay.
He posted a couple hours ago of him updating, I guess, the status of his rehab. He'll loop one more time for us. So for anybody that was curious about where he is on his rehab, as Kevin noted, he hurt his knee. He didn't blow out his ACL, for example. It's a meniscus injury that came with an estimated time of recovery of like 3 months until he could get back to full activities. And it's now been almost 4 months since the surgery. So it doesn't appear that he's that far along in baseball activities yet, but in terms of running, lifting, and doing a lot of other strengthening exercises, but there's not much doubt that he's going to be fully healthy for spring training. So that is, given that information, it's I'm still mildly surprised about it. When we had Daniel's article ready to go, the original version, we thought it was going to be likely that they would tender him a contract, and then you decide in spring training. If in spring training it looks like he can't hit and he sucks, you could always cut ties entering the year and actually save most of the money that you the way that arbitration salaries work. So there really wasn't much of a risk to tendering him a deal and at least bring him to camp as like part of the 40 men. It just shows, how skeptical they were that he'd be able to hit on a high level. So we will see exactly what's the other center field alternatives are. Jazz is recovering from his own surgery as well. And his surgery just took place a couple of weeks ago on his turf toe. So even though he's supposed to be ready for spring training, the question is, what is the backup plan behind him on the depth chart? Who is the guy that you carry on your roster as thing that second man up in center field? Brian De La Cruz, he's not going to be your ideal backup center fielder. Even Jesus Sanchez, both of those guys, even though they have a lot of value offensively, Davis kind of had that niche filled where it made a whole lot of sense. A guy that didn't expect much playing time, but could be trusted to play center. And at this moment, I don't know who that guy would be in their organization entering next year.
It's probably safe to say, no, Dane Myers, I don't want him in center field, but I think it's safe to say that he would probably at least get an offer from the Marlins, minor league deal with an invite, right? I think that's definitely still on the table just because of this technicality. I assume that's a route that Miami would probably go with this player in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. I would again not be shocked if he ends up with Miami in spring training anyway.
Yeah. Well, would you guys say that the Marlins won that trade, or do you guys expect major things from Brady Allen?
Brady Allen's been really good since they made that trade. He crushed high A for the next few months, and he got promoted to double A at the end of the year. He was hitting better than he did when he was in the Marlins system. That being said, I think there was shock at the time when they made the deal, but then you process it and you're like, come on, Brady Allen, he's not even a top 30 guy in the system. There's a chance that he has a better big league career than Davis does, but it's still at least another full year away. So given everything that happens, I don't think there should be any regrets here about what the Marlins did.
Yeah. And mentioning that position, I know you mentioned guys like Dane Myers and whatnot. Do the Marlins have in the system a guy who could fill that backup outfield role, or just someone who could potentially maybe get to that point, or the Marlins maybe flatline in terms of outfield depth, maybe in that Jonathan Davis range?
I mean, I mentioned him. Jake Mangum had a very nice season for the Jumbo Shrimp. He was, I believe, I want to say either trade or Rule 5 in the minor league portion phase of it, but he was really good. I mean, he played 298, 346. He's quick, plays center field very well. He didn't have a very good spring with Miami. I believe he got a major league invite. Wasn't very good. I would presume he once again is invited onto the major league team to go through spring training. Hopefully this time with better results. But yeah, this is probably the ideal guy. I guess it's worth throwing out Peyton Burdick's name, who had some big league time with Miami. Brian Miller, I'll mention his name again. Quick guy. He could probably play some center field, but aside from that, probably can't think of a clear name right now. Yeah.
No, you got, like you said, Mangum. Brian Miller was a name that I was going to bring up. I don't think he's going to be with the organization for much longer.
I don't think so.
Say his name 3 times and Carver will appear, right?
I was gonna say we should all take a shot every time his name is mentioned.
Yeah, for center field wise, you're very, very thin in that regard. I know Burdick could play it a little bit, but center field specifically, you don't have many guys that can do it. So,
and Victor Mesa Jr. is nowhere near ready. So
yeah,
Victor Mesa Jr. is nowhere near ready. Just looking at the depth chart here, no one's there.
Right. So you did touch on Dane Myers, and I'm watching him in winter ball. He's playing all 3 outfield positions. He's made some incredible plays in right field, but yeah, I have a hard time seeing him work in center field. But he does have the athleticism, I think, to handle the outfield. He was relatively new to that even this year, and to my eye, I think he's just gotten better and better at that. It would be a big leap to say center field, but in terms of a guy that will that I think is going to get a longer look next year than it got this year. I kind of like what I see with Dane so far in winter ball, and even what I was seeing, of course, at AAA when he was mashing for a good part of that year.
Yeah, he's been hitting it a lot better with winter ball lately. I know he had a single yesterday. He's made a couple nice plays. Yeah.
You know who else was great at winter ball? Joe Dunant. So
Joe Encarnacion was a god in winter ball.
Let's take it with a grain of salt. These winter ball statistics, man, they're rough. They're rough.
You mentioned Payne Burdick. Do you guys plan on even seeing him next year in 2024 in the major league roster, or is his time maybe as a major leaguer maybe falling off?
That's going to be an interesting decision over the offseason as to whether they keep him on the 40-man, because the question is, if he's going to be in the organization, the question is, would somebody claim him if they tried outrighting him? And I don't know the answer to that, just because the strikeout rate was so immensely high for him last year when he was repeating AAA, and I just had a hard time excusing that or really understanding what went wrong there for somebody that I was relatively high on entering last season.
Very high.
Yeah. So they're going to have an interesting, as the season goes on, depending on how aggressive they are in trying to improve the big league team, I think there's going to be a decision as to whether they want to risk DFAing him at some point this offseason. My guess is that he would clear waivers, but the upside is still kind of interesting with him. I do still like him a lot. It's just, he's always going to have that pretty big flaw in swing and missing, especially on pitches up in the zone and away from him. He has a really small window where he does damage in.
He profiles as a guy that would 100% get claimed by the Braves just to spite us.
He's somewhat. He actually struck out more than Griffin Conan this year, which is
there you go.
Says a lot.
I think the Marlins keep him just because of the fact that he's one of the few guys that can sort of fake it out there in center field. He's got power, and just like they don't have a lot of center field options in the depth chart, they don't have a lot of corner outfield options either that are big league ready. And not that he's big league ready, he's just got nothing left to prove in the minors, but he's someone that could come up in a pinch and play right field for you and at least have a little bit of a decent approach up there. So I think we see him in spring training next year getting a lot of at-bats because they got to see what they have with this player and then go back to Jacksonville at some point.
To answer Devin's question about Edwards right here, that was an interesting experiment that they began last spring. It didn't even make it to the middle of the season with him. It was brand new for him, that position, just because they were trying to find, it was the Jazz line of thinking, where they thought at the very least he'd have good range out there, but he didn't really make that transition quite as smoothly as Jazz eventually did. So I have a hard time seeing that come into play again, considering that the last couple months of the year in AAA, they didn't put him out there at all. But they were trying to find reasons to get him in the lineup. And I mean, based on what he did this year, they're going to continue to try for him to get better at multiple positions aside from second base. And I mean, I hope it works. That is a big factor with Edwards' future right there. But even then, I think they got to try they got to go in a different direction for that position, I think.
It's also worth noting Hampson and Birdie both can't play center field. They don't have the best arm, but they do have the versatility and the speed to do it. So
speaking of Jazz really quick, Christina De Nicola of MLB.com, she's touching on some storylines for the offseason. Obviously, we've spoken about it many times of, obviously Jazz, he came up as a shortstop. He's a shortstop and a second baseman, moved out to center field. The shortstop market, obviously the Marlins are going to need a shortstop, and it's not very appealing this year, especially the free agent class or, not a lot of trade options. Was Jazz that poor at short in his brief time there in the big? I think he had a few innings there in the big leagues at short. Is it that bad? Do you think they maybe try that again in spring training this year? Because I think center field is a lot easier to replace than shortstop this offseason.
Back-to-back years changing positions going into a season, that's just asking for trouble.
Hey, baby, that's what happens. It's Major League Baseball. They can do it.
You expect the organization to admit defeat and go back on what they changed.
It wasn't defeat. He did a great job in center field. He played very, I would say, Gold Glove caliber defense in center field when he was on the field after April.
And they
needed a center fielder. They needed center fielder this year. They got it. Now they need a shortstop. And Jazz is that guy who can play many positions. There's so many examples of, Cody Bellinger going from center field to right field to first base, Mookie Betts. There's examples of players of his caliber doing that to help the team's needs, and him playing short would really, really help him and to rise up the middle. You go find a center fielder, go find an outfielder. Even Davis could be your fourth outfielder. I think that makes the team a little bit better if he can play adequate defensive shortstop.
He played a lot of shortstop in 21. He did have a -4 DRS. Not very good. Aside from that, in 2020, he played 51 innings. He had 0, but that's not.
They've been sacrificing defense for offense for the last 3 years. I think it's something that they should look into because he's got the athleticism to do it. He's got the range to do it. I don't know if the arm is best for that position, but I think I love him in center field, but I think the team needs a shortstop really, really badly. I don't think that's being spoken about enough. They really need a shortstop.
Yeah, and the class, as you mentioned, isn't. I mean,
it's
really,
awful. It wasn't like last year where it's Seager and Turner and Correa and all these guys, but no, they need a shortstop this year, and there's not many options.
It tells you a lot when it's highlighted by Brandon Crawford and
it does beg the topic being brought up that he had turf toe from playing center field on turf. Maybe moving him back to the infield on dirt will help.
That's not why he got turf toe. You don't get turf toe from playing.
I know, but it is a factor into those kinds of injuries and those back injuries that he dealt with and that stuff like that. Maybe they do want to bring him back in the infield to keep him off of the turf that keeps bothering guys like Soler and Avi and stuff like that. It's a factor, not a big one, but a factor.
Right, sure. Jazz hasn't been one of those guys though that has been affected. I think Yelich never played on this turf, but
Jazz for sure was dealing with back issues related to the turf.
Soler's been dealing with that, I believe, since before Miami. So
yeah, but I think just turf or no turf, playing center field, you're more likely to get hurt out there. I think just all the balls going to the wall. I think if they want to help him, he got injured at second base too. So I think this guy is just. I think it's safe to say he gets hurt sometimes. So it doesn't matter where he plays; it's what the team needs. And I agree with some guys in the comments. You don't want to keep moving the guy around. You like him in center; he's got the speed. But I think they have to seriously consider putting him at short.
Yeah. Isaac, you did mention different options for the Marlins, and that's a great segue to these option decisions that the Marlins do have to make and different roster notes that have to be done before certain deadlines. We mentioned options, deadlines. We're going to talk about the AFL. So let's talk about a little Rule 5. You guys mentioned Rule 5. Another thing, if you mention 3 times, Alex Carver will appear. But
Guys, they need to protect.
Exactly.
We should find
Charles
those lists
LeBlanc,
faster.
guys.
You mentioned Isaac Christians and Nicola. She also put out an article highlighting just decisions the Marlins have to make, and here she had who needs to be added to the 40-man to avoid the Rule 5 draft. Victor Mesa, Nasim Nunez, Javier Sanoa, Troy Johnston, another guy for Carver, Anthony Maldonado, Evan Fitterer, Will Banfield, and Ian Lewis. A multitude of guys for just a minimal amount of spots.
So we've spoken about this so much.
Perfect.
So
Victor
much in our
not on this list. It's
Victor Mesa Jr., not
Victor
Victor.
Mesa Jr.
Wrong Mesa.
Yeah, we've spoken about it so much in this list, and I think realistically, no matter what, they have 2 guys that they will 100% certainly protect, and that is Maldonado and Troy Johnston. Some of us believe that Victor Mesa Jr. is worth protecting just in case there is a non-contender next year, like a Rockies or an Athletics or a Royals team that maybe takes a flyer on Victor Mesa Jr. and keeps him on the active roster all year long. But aside from those 3, I don't think Miami has to worry about protecting any of the rest of the guys.
Well, you guys mentioned the shortstop position. Nasim Nunez is right there.
Right. Well, just for people that aren't familiar, we'll
So
spend more time.
You
try,
Noah.
Mr.
Mr. Noah.
We'll spend a little more time on this as this deadline gets closer because it is still. I think it's the 17th is for the non-tender decisions. I think on these 40-man calls, that's actually going to be on the 15th, something like that, about 2 weeks from now. So the question is, like, which of these players would another team want to select to put directly on their major league active roster and feel they could get through that year and that it would be worth it in order to develop that player properly long-term. After that, the reason why I agree with Isaac mentioning Troy and Maldonado, those guys are the ones that have been great at AAA, where they seem to be perfectly ready to make the jump. And even if they're kind of bit role players in the big leagues, if Troy is just a platoon guy and if Maldonado is only a middle reliever, those are guys that at least they can do those roles immediately next year. There's a lot of value there, and the Marlins would not want to lose those guys for absolutely nothing, especially when at both of those areas they could use the depth themselves, and they put in all the years developing those guys from the very beginning. So those are pretty easy calls. And interestingly, both of those guys were Rule 5 eligible last year and not protected. But at this point, they've proven themselves ready. I feel pretty strongly that Victor Jr. is going to be protected, even though he had ups and downs in AA, even though you wouldn't expect him to be successful right away in the big leagues. I think the upside there is really good. I think that is one of the few guys in this entire system that has a realistic path to being an everyday player if things go right with his development. His center field defense really improved, especially this year. And his power, there's not a whole lot of major league center fielders that have his raw power. He hit a handful of homers this year to dead center field in pitcher-friendly ballparks. Even though the overall results, there's some red flags there, I do think there are enough bad teams that would certainly put up with having him on their active roster the whole year. And if they need to option him to the minors in 2025, like he's 22 years old. There's still time on his side. So yeah, the question is everybody else after that. I think Nasim Nunez is just a fascinating example because he cannot hit for any impact whatsoever. And that is continuing in the fall league. He's once again slugging in the 200s, not hitting, slugging in the 200s in a hitter-friendly league. But he does a lot of other things that are really great. He has good plate discipline. He has amazing speed as a base runner and just good instincts as a base runner. Defensively, also really great. Best defensive center fielder in the whole Marlins organization.
Shortstop.
What did I say? I said something else. I didn't say
center fielder.
Well, he has
new experiment, baby.
Yeah.
You can play it. Switch
all the
it.
positions are the same these days. Any player can play any position. Who cares?
Important correction.
Tom Brady's going to catch now. Guys.
Important correction, shortstop. So that's a player where he's certainly not ready to hit big league pitching. But if there's a team that wants to put him in that defensive specialist role, yeah, I'm leaning towards that they won't have to protect him. It's just that they're in this situation where he's still, relative to the rest of their farm system, he is one of their standout prospects. So it's like, can you afford to give away one of those, losing those guys for nothing, or it's very you get a little bit of a payment. That's the real question here with some of these guys. They're all flawed, but the question is, do you want to risk losing them for nothing when you have so few other prospects behind him that you're really confident in?
And I think Christina mentioned this in her newsletter article about Troy, that this guy obviously doesn't know major league experience, but adding him, knowing that there's the possibility that not only Bell leaves, but Miami officially does not bring back Yuli Gurriel, which is most likely, and you don't really find any first baseman on the market unless you reunite with Garrett Cooper, which I don't know, but Troy Johnson,
speaking of injury prone,
not very good at first base, and he understands that, and he's worked on it, and there's time for him left. He still has time to work at it at the big league level, but man, this guy's bat is really good. It's a lefty bat. You could put him towards the bottom of the order. That's definitely nice to have, and he gives you power too. I mean, yeah, that's something you got to protect. He will probably be the first pick of the Rule 5 if left unprotected. Maldonado probably would be a top 5 pick as well in the major league.
First
I don't
overall,
know. It's hard to say without. There's a big window to keep in mind that even after these decisions come in, it's like 3.5 weeks until the actual Rule 5 draft. So there'll be plenty of time to compare him relative to who else is out there. This is just a quick look at the 40-man, which at this moment is now at 37. So after the moves that were made earlier this week, a couple spots cut down, there are still guys on the 60-day IL on the bottom there that they need to bring back from the 60-day IL and put on the 40-man. But also the guys with emojis are the ones that are either pending free agents or have their player club options. Ooh. So a lot of those guys are going to leave the 40-man to make room. So that is why I'm still a little confused about the Jonathan Davis timing, just because once all is said and done and the dust settles here, they're still going to have a couple open spots. Like there was no huge urgency here with all these players. Yuli is gone. Wendell is gone. Robertson is gone. Cueto is gone. Barnes is not going to come back from the 60-day IL. They're going to decline his option as well. So that is why I was a little bit confused and caught off guard by the Davis move, just because there's not real urgency here. There is.
Barnes had a player option.
Maybe.
No.
Yeah.
Option.
Club.
Maybe that's them saying, hey, we plan on protecting a lot of these guys. They don't want to take the same risk they did last year. Just to touch on something with Victor Mesa Jr., we know how this team operates and we know what sunk costs are, but they did spend a good amount of money getting him and his brother here back in 2019. They spent over $6 million for the two of them. And a lot of it was thought that, hey, maybe they spent a lot of it just to get Victor Mesa Jr. here. So there was a cost to get them in Miami, in their organization. And obviously, we all know what's going on with Victor Mesa, or we don't know what's going on with him.
The artist formerly known as.
He is no longer. Yeah, I think like Eli said, the first move that the new GM will make is completely releasing him from the organization, as he has just left professional baseball. It seems like.
And speaking of that, you mentioned that we know how this team operates and how this organization runs. They're going to bring in a new GM and possibly a president of baseball operations. We don't really know how this organization is going to operate come a week from now, 2 weeks from now.
But we know that this team usually holds on. If they have invested either money or prospect capital in a player, we know that they like to hold on to them as long as possible. And Victor Mesa Jr., they did invest a lot of money in, and I believe that they will protect him no matter what. I think he's the third and final guy that they protect. I don't think Nasim they don't need to protect him. I
think prediction time today needs to be whether the new GM will hang on to Sixto Sanchez.
Oh, that's a good one, Noah. I mean, who doesn't want? He turned into a right-handed Richard Blyer, and you could use that out of the pen. Dominican.
Hey, that's an insult to Richard Blyer's longevity.
What do you mean? What do you mean? It's an insult to Richard Blyer.
His longevity.
No, I think Sixto. I don't know. That's gonna be a great question to see if he stays on the 40-man, but it's anyway.
Yeah, and I think with that we'll go ahead to our break. I don't know if we have a special winter ball flipped fish.
Yes, yes, we do.
This was all Eli. I had no part in this flipped fish. This is Eli flipped fish. But let's see if I'm sure I can get it right away.
Is this the player I mentioned earlier?
No, this is. I don't think any of you mentioned.
Okay, good. Let's see if we can get it. I like it, so let's see.
Because we're in the middle of. Hold on, let me send out a tweet. to get
Leon. There's so many players that played. It's probably Joe Denan, honestly.
Right. So what we're going to do here is a former Marlins player who is active right now in the Dominican Winter League, which is abbreviated as Lindell.
Liga Dominicana.
So yeah, this is.
Shut up now.
It's well, there's everything. The general stuff we include with our flip fish players.
An 18 WAR.
Yeah, he's had a substantial career. Debuted way back in 2010, and it's been a couple of years since he last played in the majors, but he is active right now, and he's hitting right now in the Dominican Winter League, a right-handed infielder who is from the DR originally. So he played with the Marlins. As you see, he's had a pretty substantial major league career, but he's been gone for a couple of years.
What other teams did he play for?
I don't think I need to give that many hints.
Oh. Can you at least give us what?
Yeah, no, I should know this. This is so stupid.
What was his uniform number?
Yeah, when somebody has put up, these numbers and had that over 6,000 at bats, this is a player that clearly, I don't think it's giving away too much to say that he was an everyday player for a big.
Starlin Castro?
We will find out after the break.
Starlin Castro.
I think we know
Is it Starlin Castro?
Is it?
Stick with us.
Yeah. Insane.
Good job, Daniel.
Time for the big reveal here.
Would it not be Starlin Castro?
It is.
It is.
Starlin?
Good guess.
Starlin the Marlin.
There he is.
That's such a bad.
There he is.
Hey, looks good.
He was with the Marlins for 2018 and 2019 and basically played every day, first at second base. And then remember at the end of his tenure, they moved to third base to make room for Isan Diaz because Isan needed his playing time late in 2019. So they moved him to third. He, the next team, did he go straight to the Nationals from there? But he has, ever since he had a domestic violence issue, he has not been back in the big leagues. So he played indie ball this past summer, and now he is with I can't. This is the one Dominican team I cannot pronounce. It's Águilas Cibañas, something like that. It's the same team.
I need to call Danny Alvarez.
Gerard.
It's the same team that Gerard plays for. Yeah, and actually, for people that care, Gerard is expected to make his season debut any day now. He's not yet played, but he is on their roster as of this week. And
I'll never forget when I pumped up his winter league. He was dominant. There's no other way to say it.
The baby
of the MVP.
Winter League.
The Águilas Cibañas. The team.
Cibañas, yeah.
So who else is now in? Is it? I saw Jeffrey Ann's also playing.
Yeah, we have our tracker on our site for people that are curious. Jeffrey Yan just started this past week. Dane Myers is the one that's been
started.
There.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying he started
playing.
He is coming out of their bullpen. He's only pitched once as of this moment. Maybe he pitches again tonight. But yeah, Dane Myers has been playing almost every day for Gigantes del Ceibo. And that's about, for the moment, we're waiting on Gerard. And then Dalvi Rosario is with Tigres del Lice, but he is riding the bench.
I got Danny Alvarez.
Yeah, besides, is anybody else down there? Yeah.
On the line?
Can I play the sound Danny just sent me?
Sure.
Okay.
Cibañas.
Okay.
Good luck, Eli.
So there we go. I don't know the next time we'll have a flipped fish, but we'll get creative. I just came up with this one right before the show. So
that was fun.
Kevin, lead us away to AFL. This is your baby.
To the AFL
Eli
beyond.
Eli was just mentioning the tracker for the winter ball. There is also a tracker for AFL, so it's also in there, I believe. So right now, obviously, Jacob Berry's the big name. Nassim Nunez, Paul McIntosh, McCambly, who we'll speak to tomorrow. That should be fun.
yeah.
Some guys have been struggling. I think this is the best way to put it. Gabe Bierman, Ike Buxton, Dale Stanovich, all been struggling. Buxton got off to a really nice start, and he just started struggling. McCambly got off to a very, very nice start. He kind of started struggling midway through, and those numbers have kind of come back down to earth, which is nice. PMAC has heated up a little bit. He has a home run, 3 stolen bases. Did not see that one coming. Just not hitting too much for contact there. But Nassim, as Eli mentioned, not much of an impact bat, but already 13 stolen bases. That's wrong. He stole one today, so that will be updated tomorrow.
Oh, Kevin.
Kevin's on it.
On base machine. That's the best way to put it. 364 OBP. And Jacob Berry continues to have a very nice fall league. Obviously, I guess past fall league Marlin prospects who've been good at the fall league are JJ Blady, who I believe was the fall league MVP. So just take that with a grain of, take it for what you will. Some of these performances. Has been playing a lot of second as well. He's kind of like what we saw with the Wahoos towards the second half of the season when Jose Devers came back to action there. And PMAC has been DHing a lot as well. So getting at bats, nice to see him, get those. And actually, I'm looking out, and PMAC has gone on base a pretty good amount.
Who's increased their stock the most, Kevin? Do you believe?
Sticks out. I like what Barry's doing. I've been fairly impressed. I know Eli is already making that face, but I still, unlike you guys, I still have some hope for Barry. I would like to see.
You're holding on to Barry's stock.
I would like to see Barry just stick at first. If that's the case, I hope that's the case entering spring training. But Zach McCambly's also kind of impressed me. That slider continues to work well for him, and I think, man, he should probably get a big league invite. Honestly, see what he's got there, and of course maybe see him at AAA. I mean, Miami has been pretty good at developing relievers. I'll give him that. Nardi, Josh Simpson,
who else?
Maldonado. So all those guys likely to be on the big league roster.
Sean Reynolds.
I know it's a hitter-friendly environment here, but a lot of these guys are really striking guys out, the pitchers on Miami's end. A lot of them have more.
McCambly is actually putting up the highest K per 9 of his.
Yeah, a lot of them have more than a K per inning. So that's, I guess, good to see. But
I like that.
Yeah, I don't like to be too negative. It's just that I don't feel any of these guys have really improved their stock during the fall. The closest one you could say is maybe McCambly.
Yeah.
Where
I didn't understand Daniel's question. I thought he said who's stock? Never mind. Definitely not Barry. It's McCambly. It's McCambly.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about guys that have raised our opinion of them over the last month in the fall league, and honestly, just like none of these guys have been great. I'd say McCambly's been the closest. As Kevin and Isaac noted, it is a hitter-friendly league, so a 3.38 ERA is a lot better than you're programmed to think. The league average ERA is in the mid fives or something. So McCambly's been pretty good in there, and he actually was shaky the second half of the season in AA. So to see him get on track while facing kind of similar competition to what he faced at the end of that season is encouraging. I would certainly expect him. He is also Rule 5 eligible. I don't think he's going to be picked, but I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah. So the Marlins, they're not going to protect him because he was, as I said, even in AA, he was up and down. It is nice that they seem to be salvaging something out of a guy that was a relatively early round draft pick. So I would fully expect him to be a non-roster invitee next spring and probably not going to make the opening day roster, but he's somebody that you could certainly imagine contributing at some point next year. Yeah, aside from that, what sticks out, I guess, Nassim is still stealing a ton of bases and he's playing good defense, and he's been really clutch in run production situations. It's that lack of slugging that still sticks out. It's really hard to get excited when only hits he gets are seeing eye singles or occasional line drive singles in there. It puts a lot of pressure on the other aspects of his game. And then the one thing that sticks out about PMAC that's on the stats is that runners aren't really trying to steal against him. That was a big issue during this past season. And even though that's somewhat related to the pitchers, across the AFL, like a lot of the minors, stolen bases are pretty high. Yet when PMAC catches, he's caught a couple guys already, and they're barely trying to run against him. And I think that suggests somewhat of an improvement in his pop time, even though arm strength is a bit of an issue. So we're at a point where you can't totally the ship hasn't totally sailed on him being a catcher in some capacity. That in itself, I guess, is a slight win for the organization. It's been a really small sample in the AFL. He catches like 1 out of every 3 games for them.
It is worth noting that he has made an improvement overall. I mean, I think most of us saw during spring training, just framing a lot better ball. It's something that I know he struggled blocking, gotten a lot better at that. He mentioned it also when we spoke to him that he just feels a lot better overall behind the dish, and that's nice to see. Last thing I think it's worth mentioning, and no one talks about him, but Dale Stanovich really got off to a nice start at the AFL. He had like a 0 ERA through a couple of outings, but aside from that, well, nicely looking like his no offense, but his usual self. So,
jeez, bro.
Yeah. Aside from, and Nassim, hopefully, let's see if he makes the All-Star game.
Yeah, I did want to note that this weekend is the Fall Stars game that they have over there. The fact that Nassim is, I think at least one Marlin is guaranteed to get in there. I'd be curious to see. I imagine Barry is the one that they picked just because of his prospect pedigree.
Yeah.
And the fact that he got off to that very good start the first few weeks. And Nassim you can vote for him by going to the Arizona Fall League website, or you can find their social media account. Voting is through Friday because they have to make the decision on Saturday with him.
Maybe he gets in. MVP. He can be an MVP. Exactly. Hey, it was the Fall Futures game MVP. Can he be the AFL MVP as well?
Get that trade stock up.
He's following the JJ Bleday path if he wins the MVP of that game.
All right.
I do want to ask, has Barry played first base, Eli, in the AFL? I don't know where you could check that. No?
It's been 100% third base in the Fall League. He had 1 game where he made 3 errors. But aside from that, I don't think he has made a single error. He got it all out of his system at once. I've seen some legitimately good plays from him over there. It's just overall, it's pretty clear what direction he's headed in. That's one of those other things where once new front office leadership comes in with a fresh set of eyes, maybe they are going to be a lot, more clear-eyed about his future and have him focus on playing a position that he's cut out to play at eventually at the major league level, and move his focus full time to first base. We will see what a new fresh set of eyes has to say about that.
And when he did go to Pensacola, he did put up better numbers for the most part, so that was pretty encouraging. Arguably the hardest level in minor league baseball is AA. That's where you get your best prospects. And also note that I believe on that team, the Peoria Javelinas, they do have Kyle Manzardo there, so he's playing a lot of first base. He's pretty freaking good. They also have Chase DeLauder. That's a very fun team. I'm surprised they're 12-11. They got off to a great start. We're talking about it. And, if you kind of follow this, that essentially like some of the best prospects out there. So, yeah, that's a very fun team they have there.
He was better at AA. He was, but I think we're really talking about it more because of how poor he was in high A. He really wasn't that much poor. It was a 734 OPS at Pensacola, something like that. So this is the year that he's got to show something in these upper. I assume he'll get the whole year of AA. Maybe if he does well, he'll get a taste of AAA. But man, not a fun guy to follow so far.
Yeah, and speaking not fun is Arizona Diamondbacks were about to lose the World Series to the Texas Rangers. They are down 3-1.
Hey, that's bold.
Hey.
So they're down. They could potentially
You
lose
said
the
they're
series.
about to lose.
They're close.
They're on the cusp of losing. Fair enough.
And they are very close to being down 3-1 to the Texas Rangers, but they might have hope with Max Scherzer and Adolis Garcia out for the entire series. Eli, with this series, what have you seen so far? How has Texas impressed you, and especially the Arizona Diamondbacks? Is there any way they could potentially win the series at all?
It's possible. I am relatively confident in the Rangers finishing it off. My guy Marcus Semien, he showed up. Finally, he was my MVP pick, and he drove in 5 runs last night with a home run and a clutch double early on before the game was out of hand. So that was big. Yeah, I think the Rangers are the better team, even without. Now, if they played the whole series and they didn't have Adolis for the first couple of games, maybe we talk about it a little bit differently. But I think they have enough to avoid losing 3 games in a row to get through it. I feel like well, yeah, we can't presume, but I would feel that the Rangers are it's a champion that the Major League Baseball can feel a little bit more proud of at the end of this if we get that result. You don't want to take anything away from the D-backs who they finished it off, but yeah, the Rangers are just the more talented roster, even at this point in the season. And yeah, it just shows Corey Seager again kind of reasserting himself. I mean, if his regular season was not enough, then this was his opportunity to really show people that he's not, one of the best shortstops. He's got to be like the best shortstop in baseball with the way that he hits at this level. So he has hit just as he did this almost all throughout the regular season in Texas. And for people that didn't see it, now it's on full display here, where that is an immensely valuable player. He has a humongous contract, and the conversation around that contract was a lot different last year than it is this year. Yeah, the Rangers are a really interesting story, combining big spending, but also good player development that has been factor here as well to fill out their roster. They have that's a really good story.
So
Carter.
Yeah, he's gonna be so nasty. I gotta ask you though, Eli. Unfortunately, this World Series, I mean, it's been all right, but the ratings have just been atrocious. People are not tuning in. They're not watching these games. Why do you think that is, Mr. Eli?
Arizona Fall League. Come on.
Good one, Kevin. Honestly.
Well, I think it's fair to say that there's these two. When you have these two brands that, despite the season that they've had, both of them for an extended period of time have just not been very competitive. I mean, the D-backs only made the playoffs once, like in the last decade, and the Rangers maybe once or twice, 2 times or so. In the last
they were American League champs back-to-back years, 10 years ago, right? 11 and 12. Or 10 and 11.
Both of them are. It's obviously not the same as the Marlins, but it is. I think you could say that even relative to their market sizes, the energy, the engagement that they have locally relative to market size is a lot smaller than you would think. They don't quite have that. They're just, even those particular fan bases, when you dice up the ratings more closely and you see like what percentage of Arlington, Texas people, what percentage of Phoenix, Arizona households are watching this, it's probably a lot lower than you'd get in many of these other major league markets. Right. So that is, at the end of the day, baseball it has been trending in this way, that it's just people view it with local interests in mind. So the World Series has generally been trending in this direction, kind of regardless of who the matchups have been in for years, where the postseason games don't quite, there's not like a massive disparity in postseason interest compared to regular season among people in those markets. People are really, they're in whatever level of engagement they had during the regular season. There's only so many that are going to hop on the bandwagon in the postseason if they weren't there throughout the year. It's just a different dynamic than those other sports have going on. But in terms of storylines, when you have teams that just, for the most part, haven't been in this situation in a long time, the casual, nonpartisan viewers aren't going to, there's just not a whole lot of appeal in that regard. So the fact that on both sides you have these teams, one that has never won a World Series, one that hasn't won one in Kevin's lifetime, then because of that matters. And so if they make it back in future years, that could be a little bit different. But yeah, I'm not surprised, and I'm not worried about the health of the sport all that much. It is a really unique situation. And at least the first couple games, that first game in particular, the series was one that, for the people that were watching it, it was
the best game of all time. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting.
And tonight you have 2 former Marlins going at it. You have again Eovaldi and Zach Gallen with a rematch from the beginning of the series. Do you think it's going to fare the same as it did that time, or do you guys believe in Zach Gallen, because he has not been the same pitcher as
he's not been good throughout this whole postseason? I think that's just the way. I mean, I don't know how much of a leash they're going to give him. They're going to try to get him, obviously, as long as he can go out there, and we'll see. But Nate Eovaldi, man, that guy has been lights out this postseason. There's another way.
Big game Nate, baby.
He's been fun to watch. I think that's the best way to say it, but we'll see. I mean, Texas has looked really good. As Eli mentioned, Marcus Semien, obviously, kind of stepping it up there. Corey Seager is a god, as Isaac would say, and this is a fun team to watch.
It's beautiful to see Eovaldi just develop as a pitcher the way he has, because he doesn't have that 99-mile-an-hour fastball that he had when he was a Marlin, and he's just sort of depending on just the nasty splitter, the nasty cutter that he has, getting ahead of guys. He has just blossomed into a fantastic pitcher. Great for him. Obviously, the Marlins acquired him for Hanley Ramirez back in 2012. And then with Gallen, I don't. He's such a weird case because I don't know how he puts up the numbers he does in the regular season. It seems like he's always at 90 pitches by the fourth inning, especially with the Marlins. I remember that being an issue. So with the Diamondbacks, but he was a top 3-4 Cy Young Award guy this year. And in my opinion, is especially at this level, at the postseason, if he's not absolutely dotting, he's going to get hit, especially by this team. So I don't know. I think Zach Gallen, I would be scared to give him a lot of money whenever he does reach free agency, in my humble opinion. It's a sketchy guy. It's a sketchy guy on the mound. Personally, I'm sure he's a very nice guy.
Speaking of guys,
sorry.
Go ahead. I was just gonna.
Another player worth giving, noting out here is Evan Carter. Man, that guy been fun to watch. So, not only the postseason, but ever since he made his debut, he's been hitting as good as any of these guys on the Texas lineup. 162 WRC plus. Hitting 309, already has a homer, 6 RBIs. I mean, he's been really good. He's been a fun guy to watch.
Only played in 22 regular season games.
He was supposed to go to Duke and ended up going to Texas in the draft. He's been a fun story.
That guy's a god, bro.
One of the best prospects in baseball. Yeah,
it's crazy spending all this money on talented position players, and you have Evan Carter coming up in around, I think, August, and now he's batting third, I believe, in the World Series. It's crazy.
And
that's what the Marlins wish Blade was.
You look at both rosters, and a lot of it comes down to a lot of development. Arizona, 18 homegrown guys, and then you look at Texas. They should have. I know Jace. You have Josh Young there. You have a lot. Evan Carter, as I mentioned, a lot of guys there who they've developed, and it just goes to tell you, Marlins, you got to kind of follow this, and they have 14 homegrown guys. So goes to show that development really is key to sustained success, as we hear every day. I mean, Baltimore 100 wins. So yeah.
Last guy we got to mention, Travis Jankowski, man. What a ball game that guy
freaking
had.
Dude.
You're on the bench for most of the series, most of the postseason. Adolis Garcia gets hurt, and you're all of a sudden batting eighth. And this guy goes 2 for 3 or whatever it was with a couple of ribbies, a big 2-out double in yesterday's game. I think it was in the top of the second.
Crazy defensive plays.
Great defensive play. That's why you love baseball, because someone like Travis Jankowski gets the start and he comes through. There's nothing better than the game of baseball. Batting ninth, I'm sorry. That's awesome.
Also, you got to look at Tommy Pham. Look at all that red.
He's gonna get a bag.
He's gonna get paid. Maybe not a long contract, but it's gonna be worth the money.
Put him at center field for Miami for a while.
No, that's what I tweeted a while ago. Tommy Pham should be the Marlins center fielder, and I got a text immediately saying, "No, Isaac." I'm like, jeez.
Sorry, that may have been me.
It wasn't you.
Look at him this postseason: 293, 500 slugging, 800 OPS, and around 58.
You know what I really love on the Marlins?
It is incredible what he's.
You know what I'd really love on the Marlins? Gabby Moreno. He's been great.
I mean, I think he's been okay. He had a big he let a big pitch get away from him in the second inning yesterday from Miguel Castro. I know it was a tough one, but you gotta not let that ball get away. That's what started the whole inning for the Rangers. You can, and I sort of saw that coming with Castro. He threw one in the dirt, and Moreno did not get in front of that ball, and he really, really cost the Diamondbacks on that play. He had a couple of hits. One of them was off the end of the bat. I haven't been too impressed with Mr. Moreno. But I know he's a stud. He's nasty. But I wouldn't hit him third. I would not be hitting him third. Tommy Pham should be hitting third.
It's well done, Miguel Castro. They've actually put him on the postseason roster throughout,
Yeah, he's been bad, bro.
He's not very good. And they put him in a position, I believe, where the man on third.
They who was it? The starter, Heaney, or someone gave up the double to Young. I'm sorry, and then they brought in Castro with the man on second, nobody out. He got the first 2 outs, and then Moreno couldn't block a ball, run scores, and then 5 consecutive hits.
Yeah.
So
Someone else we have to mention just very quickly, probably maybe you could say the best player so far for the Diamondbacks this postseason, Ketel Marte.
That guy's
Former
a
future
fucking
Marlin.
god.
20-game
That should have been a
postseason hit
Marlin.
streak. That is an insane number, especially in the postseason where it seems like everything is notched times 10 to have a hitting streak in those type of games and in the World Series. Easily the best player in the Diamondbacks, in my opinion.
He was a guy, I believe, a couple of years ago, obviously with the injuries and all that, that you were like, man, is this guy going to really be legit? Is he going to be, consistently really good major leaguer? And he's kind of proving it this postseason. Like, he's on what, like a 16-game hit streak right now, or 20 games?
20
games.
Game postseason hit streak. That's wild.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
a guy the
he-
Marlins wanted before that he got
Yeah.
extended again by the D-backs a few years ago in that offseason. Was that already? That was only 2 years ago. Was it 2 or 3?
Yeah, 2 or 3. Yeah.
Right. They wanted him. He would have been pricey back then, but at that moment it was it must have been coming off the 2020 season. And and he ended up staying put. It's a really team-friendly extension that he's on. And it's for a D-back kind of like the Marlins, a team that historically just hasn't had a whole lot of continuity. They haven't had guys spend 10 plus years with them historically, and Marte is on track to do so, and do so as one of the key pieces of their team. So having him in place has been so important. He's been one of the most important pieces even during the season, even though it wasn't getting quite this much attention. That's one of their key building blocks that they've had for a while now, and that they have now for a few years going forward.
And it's worth noting that this D-backs team is just going to get better and better. Their farm system is arguably one of the best in baseball. You have Jordan Lawler just sitting on your bench. That guy's going to be a stud. He'll probably be the starting shortstop next year. And you have Drew Jones down there. I mean, they have a very good farm system, and we'll see what they do, because obviously Gerardo Perdomo as a 9 here, that guy was an all-star. He's been pretty good, not lucky season, but pretty impressive that he was as good as he was this past season. And we'll see what they do there, but definitely, this is a fun team. Alec Thomas has just risen from the dead. He went from a mad kind of player to, man, this guy's pretty good. So we'll see. They have a lot of questions to answer, and they're just gonna get better. That's just the best way to say it.
Well, that's really good.
Thomas is one of my favorite guys to watch play center field, man. That guy, and think about the experience he's getting. This guy represented Mexico in the WBC, and now he's played all the way to the World Series. And he's a pretty young player, 24 or something like that. He's a very fun. Watching that guy play. I think he's one of the best defensive center fielders in baseball. He's a vacuum out there.
Yeah. Yep. And if you also go on the pitching side really quickly, I think 2 players mentioning, you have to go Brandon Pfaadt, who just did a complete 180 from how he did in the regular season, and then also Kevin Ginkel, who probably the best reliever this entire postseason. Just the way
he needs Thompson, the reliever Thompson. Miami needs that guy. He's a interesting, hard guy to hit.
I think with that, right, we're gonna go into predictions, but really quickly from you 4 and myself, do the Rangers close it out tonight?
No.
Yes.
No, it's going back to Texas.
Back to Arlington.
No.
Deep in the heart of Texas.
I guess I'm the only one. They'll close it out.
No, I think it ends.
Close it out.
Okay.
I think they close it out.
If not, I'm gonna have to watch from Spain on Friday and Saturday. So, but I think it ends tonight.
Yeah.
All right.
Not to be that guy, but I'm glad it's gonna end.
How dare
Why
you?
would you be
Kevin.
glad it ends?
I'm
How
glad.
I'm
dare
out
you?
for Kevin.
Sorry,
I want the
he wants-
offseason to pick up.
He wants to focus on FIU football. It's okay.
Eli, let's get the video.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
It's not updated yet. It will be.
I was about to say, I thought we retired that.
So for this prediction time, we're gonna go ahead. Eli had the idea. We're gonna predict: does Josh Bell opt out of his contract? Very simple. Will Josh Bell opt out of his $16.5 million contract, seek free agency, and try to get a longer and bigger deal? So if we have that music, of course, leading us off will be
just to give our audience the quick context. It's $16.5 million is his option for next year. That's what he earned this past year. Overall, his numbers this year were not quite up to his usual standard, but the way he finished off at the end of the year with the Marlins with a flourish makes it a lot more either way. So the rest of the Marlins option decisions to me are pretty clear cut and obvious, but that's why I picked this one, because as it gets down to it, I really could see it going either way. And it obviously has a big impact on what the Marlins do here with their other moves.
All right. Leading us off, as always, Mr. Kevin.
I'll say Josh Bell will opt into a $16.5 million player option. When you look back over a calendar year, he just hasn't been very good. He had a very nice stretch here in Miami, and it wouldn't hurt him to stick around in the NL East, where he's had a lot of success. So it doesn't hurt him, and he'll be one of the big pieces of this Miami team moving forward.
All right, Mr. Daniel. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and say Josh Bell does opt into his contract. He has not been the same player since getting traded to San Diego. He did have an uptick here with the Marlins to end the season after being traded, but I think $16.5 million is just too much money. Maybe he opts out, just depending on the terms of free agency class, but he will opt in. Eli.
I think he's gone. I think he is going to opt out of his deal. He is above all else, he's a Scott Boras client, and Boras is very bullish on his clients, imploring them to test free agency at every opportunity that they reasonably have. The way that he performed down the stretch, his underlying numbers, even when he was struggling early in the year, kind of looked vintage Josh Bell-like. So I don't know if his stock is really that much lower than it was last year when he was on the open market and when he got 2 years, $33 million guaranteed. So I think it's still really possible that the Marlins try to retain him, but I do think he's going to go out on the market and look for a multi-year deal of some kind.
Mr. Isaac.
Exactly what Eli said. I was there when the team was eliminated. He was asked that exact question. I didn't get the vibe that said, hey, I'm coming back. So I think he opts out. I think the Marlins are going to try to re-sign him, but it is an opt-out for me.
Last but certainly not least, Mr. Noah.
I'm very on the fence about this. I think he's going to opt out, although I would not be shocked if he opts in.
All right. 2 opt-ins, 3 opt-outs. Will Josh Bell be a Marlin in 2024? But
That's not the question. That's not the question. The question is, does he opt out, not whether he's a Marlin.
Well, if he opts out, he will be seeking a much larger deal, what the Marlins most likely could not afford. But we will be there in 2024 to see if Josh Bell is there or if there is a replacement. This has been FOF Live. Okay, enough, Kevin. All right. FOF Live presented by La Pop. For myself, Kevin, Isaac, Eli, Noah, as always, go Fish.